Hi there. I hope this video finds you well. I checked out for a while. In fact, it's been 7 months since I made my last video. Many of you reached out to me to make sure I was okay. Thanks to all who did. I probably owe all of you an explanation. It's wrong to build meaningful relationships and then just pull away suddenly. I'm guilty of that. 2019 was a very difficult year for me, and it tore me apart emotionally. I allowed myself to harbor some pretty dark thoughts and lost all motivation to put out new content. I figured that since I was doing this and not getting compensated in any way for it, that I wouldn't be hurting anyone. I was wrong. Over the past few weeks, I've received notes indicating a significant level of concern over current events. I think I let all of you down, and I'm sorry for that. One thing I can assure you of is that I still hold the same opinion regarding the future of gold, and my reserve of gold remains tightly held. The next couple of years are going to be very difficult for many people, yourselves included. You are going to need an iron will to get through it with minimal damage. This means more than just holding an ample amount of gold. You are going to need to keep a clear head and filter out an overwhelming amount of misinformation. You are going to need to build up your emotional reserves so that you will have enough energy to support your loved ones while maintaining your own sense of inner stillness. You are going to need to fortify your relationships with those who mean the most to you. If you hurt someone recently, own it and seek forgiveness. If someone has hurt you, do your best to forgive them. Just as importantly, you are going to need to work on your physical health and become the strongest version of yourself that you can be. I'll do my best to be here for you so that we can get through this together. So with that in mind, let's discuss what should be on top of everyone's mind right now, the COVID-19 pandemic. Johns Hopkins has been doing a pretty good job tracking the pandemic and displaying all of the reported statistics. What we can see here is that the COVID SARS-2 virus has appeared in most geographic areas. It's most prevalent in China, Europe, and North America, but has also started showing up in Africa, South America, and Australia. I've seen differing opinions about the severity of the situation. Let me give you my own thoughts based upon what we know about the virus. The COVID SARS-2 virus is a novel virus, meaning nobody has developed an immunity to it because it's new. It spreads very quickly and easily because a person who is a carrier is contagious before showing any symptoms, and symptoms can sometimes not show up for 2 to 3 weeks, or even at all. In a heavily populated area where people frequently interact, it results in one person contaminating on average 4 to 6 others before ceasing to become contagious. This leads to explosive growth. Now, for most people, the symptoms are fairly benign, but for 1 in about 5, the symptoms can be quite severe due to an effect called a cytokine storm. A cytokine storm is where the immune system goes into overdrive, and it results in a buildup of fluid in the lungs. Many who have a severe response will need hospitalization. The big problem is that with the rate of spread of this virus, there will be a rapid rise in the number of people requiring hospitalization. If the hospital system becomes overwhelmed, as it has in Italy, then there will be a disproportionate number of deaths. As we can see in the numeric statistics towards the right, the number of deaths in Italy has now reached almost 5,000. Compared to the 7,000 to 8,000 in Italy who have been reported to have recovered, this is quite an alarming statistic. This, folks, is the reason why the authorities have become so alarmed. This is the reason why you should actively seek to minimize contact with others until the virus subsides. To do otherwise, put yourself and countless others at risk. And just so that you don't think I'm being alarmist, my brother-in-law was one of the statistics of the H1N1 outbreak. He caught it while in France and died 10 years ago, leaving my sister widowed and my niece without a father. So when you look at this chart and you see that only 13,049 people have died so far, remember that each one of those numbers were real people with loved ones that they left behind. Also remember that the number of cases has been doubling about every 4 to 5 days outside of China, and so it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And if we focus on the chart in the lower right, we can see just how fast the number of cases is growing. It appears that in China, the number of new cases has leveled out, so either they are failing to report new statistics, or their draconian quarantining measures are working. I'm hoping for the latter, because that will mean that what we're doing now in Europe and North America should be effective. What's a little troubling to me is that in the US we are well behind the curve in terms of testing, so the number of cases outside of China may be greatly understated. Social distancing programs will hopefully be effective, but there may be many more people infected than are showing up in this chart, and so these numbers will continue to grow before we see the trend level off. Of course, the efforts to minimize contact between people is going to have other effects. I've personally seen the impact of people losing their cool. Most of the grocery stores where I live look like war zones. The empty shelves remind me of pictures I saw of Venezuela over the past couple of years. People staying home are not consuming much from our service economy. They aren't taking trips. They aren't going to the movies or to restaurants. This is especially true for people who don't get paid if they don't show up physically to work. These people are cutting back on consumption. Many of them, who are living paycheck to paycheck, aren't paying their rents or their mortgages. To be blunt, the entire world economy is grinding to a halt and will continue to be in a frozen state for as long as we need to keep people isolated. But unfortunately, the debt is still there, and the creditors are demanding to be paid. And so we get this. The stock market understands what's going on. The S&P 500 has declined by 32% in a single month. This is a decline with few precedents. The powers that be are worried. Remember when Jerome Powell did his about-face with regard to raising interest rates in December of 2018 when stock results were disappointing? Well, a week ago, in a surprise move, the Fed cut interest rates to zero on a Sunday and pledged $700 billion worth of new quantitative easing to fight off the effects of the virus. Now, think about what he did for a minute. Will the money help to fight the virus? Nope. Will it inspire confidence and get people to buy things? Nope. Will it help to avoid bankruptcies? No, but it is certainly a signal. It's a signal that the Federal Reserve will do what's necessary to avoid mass bankruptcies. So long as debt exists, regardless of the interest rate, it must be paid. Cash needs to be provided according to the debt payment schedule. By monetizing the debt, the Federal Reserve can take the liabilities onto its own balance sheet. It can cheapen the currency and thus make the remaining debt more serviceable. And if you see the look that Trump is giving Powell, it can tell you all you really need to know. The Federal Reserve is not independent. The Federal Reserve is going to burn the currency before allowing the country to go into a depression. Once again, the Federal Reserve is going to burn the currency before allowing the country to go into a depression. So, what can we expect to happen next? Back in December 2017, I put out a video analyzing the periodicity of the Dow to gold ratio. In it, I analyzed stock versus gold cycles. Here was the final chart that I showed in the video. People were getting pretty frustrated with gold by that point because the stock market had been doing quite a bit better than gold since the year 2011. Gold had still performed twice as well as stocks since the year 2001, but admittedly, it had lagged significantly since hitting $1,900 in 2011. What I predicted at the time was that if past was prologue, we should see gold significantly outperform stocks until about the year 2022, when the Dow to gold ratio could hit a value as low as 4. It was a pretty bold prediction considering the Dow to gold ratio at the time was about 20. In order to reach a value of 4, it would require a 5-fold increase in the value of gold relative to the Dow. It didn't mean that the price of gold would increase 5-fold, only that the relative price would change. This target could be realized if the price of gold increased 5 times, or if the Dow declined 80%, or somewhere in between. Personally, I was hoping for a dramatic price decline in stocks because it would allow gold to be exchanged for stocks without much of a drag due to capital gains taxes. Now, I did receive quite a bit of heckling for putting out that video, especially from trolls and others outside of the precious metals community who just happened upon the video. After all, stocks were roaring and were showing no signs of stopping. I have to admit that I was bothered a bit, and so I did some follow-up work on signal processing techniques applied to gold prices. That work suggested a peak in the gold price in about the 2021 to 2022 timeframe, and so it made me feel more confident that the prediction was right. So, what's happened since that time? Let's take a look. As you can see, I was wrong short term. For 9 months, the Dow to gold ratio climbed until it hit a peak of 22.36. But then it started to come back down. At first, the decline was gradual. Recently, the decline has accelerated quite a bit. Currently, the Dow to gold ratio stands at 12.74. This means that gold can buy almost 60% more equities than it could at the end of 2017. But my guess has not yet been validated by price action. Now, I didn't predict that the pandemic was going to happen, only that social mood was going to change. If it wasn't the virus that acted as the catalyst, it probably would have been something else. The time was about right for a darkening of people's hearts, including mine, it seems. If the Dow to gold ratio hits 4 over the next couple of years, it will mean that gold will be able to buy about 3 times the amount of equities than it can now. Will it get there? Quite possibly. Will it be a happy time if it does? Not at all. Will you be able to trade your gold for a considerable stake in American businesses? Yes, but it's going to take an iron stomach to do it. I'm suggesting maybe a gradual transition where a little is sold at a time. Obviously, you won't want to go 100% into equities. You'll want to keep some in reserve. And as I suggested in recent videos, a good reserve is to have about 30 to 40% in gold, and maybe the rest in equities. Now, I promise I will try to put out more frequent videos. Hopefully my spirits will lift. We'll get through this together, and we'll watch the weather change together. Now go wash your hands.